I have to say I'm really giddy this week. You know, we win a lot of lawsuits. I am lucky that I feel like I've got like this 100-foot tall bodyguard with me named Aaron Siri. I get to charge into a battle. I say, you know what? Get in there. I want the information from the CDC. I think they're lying to me. I get to pick a fight with the CDC. I get to pick a fight with the FDA. I get to pick fights with the NIH. And then I send in Aaron Siri to go get him and come back with the information. And if you've been watching this show, you know how successful he has been, which means that's how successful we have been. And for all of you that sponsor and donate to us, what you are about to see is a story that you should be thanked for, because without you supporting us, none of this is possible. I'm talking about the vSafe data, the system built by the CDC to track the COVID injuries. We sued because they weren't being transparent about it. This is Aaron Siri on Fox News talking about it.
Civil rights attorney Aaron Siri, the managing partner at Siri and Glimstad. It was 463 days, you tell us, from the time that you requested this vSafe data. Why did it take so long in your estimation, sir?
It's a very good question. Why did it take numerous legal demands, multiple appeals, 2 lawsuits in fact, before the CDC finally handed over the vSafe data? Maybe the answer is that now that we have that data and we've looked at that data, of the 10 million users within vSafe, 7.7% of them had to seek medical care after vaccination. That is an incredibly high percentage.
Another 2.5 million, we're talking 25%, missed work or school or had bad reactions to the vaccine. What's the takeaway for you from this? Is it significant?
It seems incredibly significant. A big reason that they pushed the COVID vaccine is they said it'll prevent them from having symptoms, being hospitalized, missing work. Now that we have the data, we could see that getting the vaccine caused 25% of people who got the shot within this data set of 10 million people to miss work, to have some serious event.
There's some concern when you have 4 million people reporting joint pain after they got the vaccine.
It's 4 million out of a group of only 10 million people. So that makes that number extremely high. Joint pain is an immune reaction. That is something to be concerned about after vaccination. And all of the data has been put up by our client, who we represented in this case, ICanDecide.org. And on their website, they've created this amazing, easy-to-use, simple interface where you can search all this data.
Well, it's amazing when we make the news for what we're doing, because the news does not like talking about what we're doing here at the Highwire and the Informed Consent Action Network, which is the nonprofit that makes this show possible. But we did win this vSafe data, and it is my honor and pleasure to speak to the incredible warrior that we have on our side that made all that possible, Aaron Siri. Aaron, first of all, congratulations. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Del.
Yeah.
And thank you, ICANN, for making this work possible.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be possible without you guys.
Yeah. So a good question is asked in that news report. You know, before we get into the details, you listed some of the details, some very shocking numbers there. And by the way, just so you know, when we put this dashboard up, that ICanDecide.org/vSafe, which is, you know, where people can find it. We have had, I think it's 3 so far in just the last few days it's been up since, what was it, like Monday, Tuesday we put it up? Monday, 300 times, 300-fold the amount of visitors we usually get to the website. So it just shows you what an incredible thing this is. But the process, I mean, you and I talked about this, I feel like over a year ago. Like, we need to see that data. CDC said it was going to be transparent. We were basically turning the population of America, where we live, into a giant clinical trial, right? Skipping out of the studies because of the emergency use authorization. And CDC promised us, we know this is dangerous. We know this is dangerous, but trust us, we've built a surveillance system on top of our VAERS system, and we'll be able to track and let you know how everything's going. So, you know, were they transparent? What did you think they should have done with this vSafe data? Let's start there. What should they have done based on what they told us?
They should have released it to the public immediately.
Yeah.
Most of the vSafe data is simply check the box. It doesn't contain any personally identifiable information. It's something the CDC could have provided to the public right away, And now we know, now that we have it, that by May of 2021, most of the vSafe data that we now have received was already available.
Wow.
And they could have provided it within minutes. They sent us a few Excel files. They
Right.
could have produced that in literally a matter of minutes, provided transparency to the American public. As in that segment you just showed from Fox News, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I know we're going to go through a lot of stuff today, but I'll just say that those figures were available all the way back in May. Why weren't they made public? Why weren't they a part of the conversation before, let's say in June, they then said, let's give this shot to babies?
Man. And why were we, and we're going to get into the details, why were we being told a totally different story than what they were actually seeing with their own eyes in their own system? But before we get to what we discovered, I just want to talk about the journey, because sometimes the journey is more telling than the information that you actually get.
Yeah.
You know, we always start these things out, you know, we don't have to be litigious. One of the things that your law firm is doing for us is filing Freedom of Information Act requests. For people that are brand new to this, that essentially is the government works for us. In the United States of America, they're our employees, which means just like I can check my employees here, I can check their emails. Everyone that's, you know, using our email system, I want to know what my employees are saying. I don't do that, by the way, but I could. We get to do that with our public officials because they work for us, and so we make demands. We would like to see, you know, for instance, we talked about the Peter Daszak or the autopsies. We put in these requests. We want to see how many autopsies you've looked at from the VAERS system. And then they push back, and when they push back, we end up filing a lawsuit. In this case, what was our original Freedom of Information Act request when it came to vSafe?
Yeah, the request was filed in June 24th, 2021. So quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And the initial request we filed was for all the de-identified information in the vSafe system.
Okay.
Okay. The reason that we asked for that was twofold. First, as you just mentioned, we are a repeat player with these federal health agencies.
Yes, they know who we are.
We have hundreds of FOIA requests before the FDA, the NIH, the CDC, HRSA, go down the AHRQ, there's about over 20 actual health agencies within the HHS.
Right.
And so when we've done FOIAs in the past and we've asked for medical information, what will typically happen is they'll tell us, oh wait, we can't give you that because it includes personally identifiable information about people in the public, so you can't have it. And then we go through this long rigmarole where we say, okay, just please redact it and then provide it, and then eventually we end up getting the data. For that reason, and this one other reason I'm about to say, we asked for the de-identified data, and the other reason is, before we file a FOIA request, we do some homework.
Okay.
And when we did that homework, what we found is that in the CDC's official vSafe guidance documents, it actually says that de-identified data was available to Oracle, which was housing the data.
So they're the ones that are like sort of housing all the data. They don't want them to have that information because that's a private company, correct?
Oracle's a private company.
Okay.
And so they're not allowed to share that kind of information. So it says it right there.
Right.
The CDC's own material. It's de-identified. So we thought, great, this is the perfect request.
Yeah.
We're asking for something that apparently in their own literature they're saying exists in the hands of another private entity already. Should be easy, just hand it over to us.
Right.
So we filed a FOIA request, as I mentioned, on June 24th in 2021. Eventually they respond, and the response is that they're not able to locate any data.
They can't locate any data.
Any de-identified data.
Wow.
So we appeal that on August 25th.
Okay.
And, we say, well, your own literature says you gave de-identified data to Oracle.
Right.
So, one, we were trying to shortchange this whole process, guys.
Right.
Come on, we know how this goes. And two, we know you have it already, so just give it.
Right.
So, in addition to filing the appeal, a few days later, on September 1, we also submitted a second FOIA request.
Okay.
This time, the FOIA request made explicit we'd like all de-identified data that you gave to Oracle,
Okay.
basically.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing it.
Yeah.
I hear, I see it on-
They're
I see it
getting the
on screen.
details. We got that happening
I
there.
saw that on the screen. So there it is.
Yeah.
That's basically what it asked for.
Okay.
Now,
Because there's been a lot of questions why 2 FOIAs and ultimately 2 lawsuits. So that's why 2 FOIAs. We thought
Well-
they're pushing back in a weird way, so let's be very
Well, there's a
specific.
third FOIA, actually.
Okay.
Well, that was there's those. So then we said, okay, now they'll capitulate.
Right.
I wish the story ended there. It does. It rarely does. That's the second FOIA.
Right.
Okay. And then, so we thought, okay, now they'll capitulate and give us the data. No, they still maintain that they can't give us the data. So they really left us with no choice. So we sued in federal court on those 2 requests, as well as the third one that we won't talk. That's not as relevant.
Yeah.
Okay. And the first lawsuit was filed on December 28, 2021. I see it on the screen right
There
here.
we are. Yep.
You can see Informed Consent Action Network versus the CDC.
And by the way, everyone out there that's donating to us, I want you to see in many ways your name is in there. Your name is a part of the Informed Consent Action Network, because that's not anything except those people that support us, giving us the ability to fund the work that you're doing. And it's not easy. It's not a one shop and all of a sudden they hand it to us. Look at how much time you're putting in with your team to try and get this out. So, okay, you filed that case.
Yeah, if we could pull that complaint back
Yeah.
up for a moment, it might be worth just taking a look at just there's a few paragraphs, I believe, that were highlighted. You asked me to tell the story.
Yeah, I did. Let's,
I put
let's
it
see
together.
Okay, great.
And it's
Here it is.
It says the federal government has mandated that millions of Americans receive these vaccines, and this is what we're writing to the court. in
Yeah.
this lawsuit. These vaccine products. HHS has also been given pharmaceutical companies complete immunity for injuries caused by those products, mandating that millions of Americans inject a product for which they cannot hold the manufacturer liable if the product injures them, demands complete transparency, especially when it comes to releasing the data underlying the product safety. FOIA exists precisely so that the American people can obtain transparency, and in this case, obtain the data which supports the CDC's claims to intensive safety monitoring.
Right.
And then it goes on to explain in
Yeah.
this paragraph what vSafe, the smartphone app, is, and we can go.
I'll read it. vSafe is a
Sure.
smartphone app that allows vaccine recipients to tell CDC about any side effects after getting the COVID-19 vaccine. The purpose of the app is to rapidly characterize the safety profile of COVID-19 vaccines when given outside a clinical trial setting, and to detect and evaluate clinically important adverse events and safety issues that might impact policy or regulatory decisions.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it goes on, and I think this might be the last.
Okay, let's see it. Go ahead. You take it.
Says, data submitted to vSafe is, quote, collected, managed, and housed in a secure server by Oracle, end quote. That is a quote from the CDC's own document.
All right, so you're
We're quoting.
that's
from
why you got the little
CDC.
number in there,
This is
7.
the footnote
Okay.
7. A private computer technology company, although the CDC has, quote, access to the individual survey data, quote, Oracle can only access, quote, aggregate, de-identified data for reporting, end quote.
But there's more. Let me read this. Despite the
Please.
fact that the de-identified data already exists, it is already in the hands of a private company. And the CDC has never objected to its production. The CDC has so far failed to produce it to plaintiff or to the American public. The federal government is thereby not only failing to provide the transparency necessary to earn the American people's trust regarding these vaccines, but it is also failing to comply with FOIA.
That's right.
Yeah, excellent.
So we filed this lawsuit, and we
Yeah.
thought, okay, now we don't have to deal with the folks in the CDC. Now we get to deal with the CDC's attorneys.
Right.
Little law firm. They're called the Department of Justice.
Right.
Never heard of them. They have all our money.
Right.
So so we figured better we could maybe deal directly with the Department of Justice in this one. So we sued them in federal court with that suit, and we started that dialogue with the Department of Justice. And
Yeah.
it often happens they reach out and so forth. After months of back and forth with the Department of Justice, and they filed an answer, we had status conferences, we had agreed scheduling orders and so forth, the DOJ maintained the position that since the de-identified data doesn't actually already exist, they said that the CDC apparently got it wrong when they wrote what they wrote in their own document.
Really? So that was the argument, that it didn't go to Oracle de-identified, as it was said.
They said that it's not that what you just read in black and white in that quote is not actually what happened in reality. So after months of
I mean, hold on a second, though.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I always just think of like, I think like a movie. I used to sort of, write. I was in Hollywood, So these lawyers all sit down. You got the CDC, your client sitting there like, we got a little problem here. We need to come up with the best argument we can. First of all, the fact that they're trying to keep us from getting to it is just, as I said, sometimes the process tells you more than what you actually see. What are they trying to hide from us? Why is this so important? But the best argument they come up with is either we were misinformed or we just lied about our process.
Well, it was kind of it's kind of like na for two reasons.
Okay.
One, FOIA requires the government to reasonably interpret a request for information. The request, as reasonably interpreted, when we asked for de-identified data, it meant if it exists or ones that you could make
Right.
from the data, right?
Right.
It didn't even dawn on me, frankly, when we filed this request that they would take this position, which they'd never done before.
Wow.
That, sorry, if you had to ask for all the data, right, then we could have made de-identified data, which is always what happened in the past. But since we asked for it in the first
De-identified.
instance, they're taking the position, it doesn't already exist that way, so you can't have it.
So you were too specific.
Too specific. I was trying to be too accommodating.
Right, right.
And obviously, I did it with the knowledge that we had this Oracle admission in their papers, which
Yeah.
they then kind of disavowed. All right.
Okay.
So that goes on
Man.
from December, when we filed the suit, up until April, where we're finally like, okay. And I remember the call with the Department of Justice. I literally remember telling the Department of Justice attorney, I said, look, if what you're saying is you're just going to maintain this super technical position, then then my client, ICANN, will simply just file another request.
Right.
And instead of asking for a de-identified data, we'll just ask for all the data. And then we'll go through that, and then we'll come back, and if you don't provide it, we'll just sue again. I'm like, do we really want to do that? Isn't that such a waste of not only taxpayer money, your resources,
Yeah.
judicial resources, obviously my client's resources? Not sure you care about that so much, but
Well, I do. I mean, look,
No,
there's
not
a big,
the Department of
clearly.
Justice.
Yeah, right. Okay,
Obviously you
good.
care.
I care.
You care.
I care because
I
there's a
care.
lot of other lawsuits we like to go after. This is sucking up a bunch. Our government
Absolutely.
is sucking up unnecessary resources
So
from all sides.
So on April 1, 2022, we filed the third FOIA request for the purposes of this conversation.
Yeah.
And it asked for, there it is, all data submitted to vSafe since January 1, 2022. Okay, there we have it. Now we're-
Folks, this has got to be why a hammer is listed. When we hear like $25,000 for a hammer in government, like they just can't do anything simply, right? Like,
Well, I think that, I would like to think that this is a case where they're just not paying attention, where, they're letting somebody milk them for 25 grand for a hammer.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure that's the case in this instance.
Right.
I have a feeling that if, Merck wanted this data, they'd have gotten it pretty quick.
Right.
But
Yeah.
any of it, I'm not going to speculate.
okay.
Right.
Let's not speculate.
Yeah.
We only know what we know.
Right. So after we filed the third request, we then, basically went back to the DOJ and said we filed the third request. We filed this additional request. Do we have to go through with it? And clearly we did, because on May 17, 2022, we filed the second lawsuit.
Wow, they really made us do this.
And this is the second lawsuit. So this lawsuit now sues on the request you just saw.
to
for
see all the data.
And I believe there's a few excerpts that your folks wanted
Right.
to pull out.
Yep. Plaintiff asked through its instant FOIA request that the CDC produce all data submitted to the vSafe program to provide transparency regarding the government's claim that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective. The public should have immediate access to all disclosable vSafe data. Hence, once the CDC produces that data, plaintiff intends to make it publicly available, even though disclosable data already exists, and even though the CDC has never objected to its production, the CDC has failed to produce it to the plaintiff and the American public. The federal government is thereby not only failing to live up to its promise of transparency, but it is also failing to comply with FOIA once again.
Yep.
All right.
Plaintiff,
Yep.
ICANN is a nonprofit organization that advocates for informed consent and transparency and disseminates information necessary for same with regards to all medical interventions. It intends to make all vSafe data immediately available to the public so that independent scientists can immediately analyze that data. It believes that we need all hands on deck, both inside and outside the government, to address serious and ongoing issues with the vaccine program, including waning immunity, adverse reactions, etc. Locking out independent scientists from addressing these issues is at best irresponsible and unethical. And now, that's not, those those are not technically required arguments that we
Right.
make in these papers.
Yeah.
They're a bit more of window dressing, but we.
But
make
I
them.
like that because honestly, you're making history here. I mean, someone will have to go back and unpack what the hell happened here. Why was there not transparency? And if all the stories we told today of death and injury that we're seeing rising all around the world, when it comes down to sort of going back, what was going on? What were our government agencies doing? It's these legal briefs, in many ways, these notes that are going to stand there. And you don't want to just be dry. Why did they make ICANN sue twice? What was actually going on here? I love that you're sort of giving it context because I think it's important for the historical, time capsule.
And it's why FOIA is so powerful because, like you pointed out, FOIA is the tool that Congress created to allow us to ask essentially questions
Yeah.
of the government in the form of provide all the documents that support X assertion or that statement, and they are compelled by law
Yeah.
to respond. It's not like when, there are many other forums that happen. You see testimonies before Congress, and technically there's some level of compulsion there and so forth. But here you really are compelling them. So when you get an answer, to me, that is one of the most reliable answers you can get when you want to know information from the government.
It's really, truly one of those spectacular, shining diamonds of the American experiment, I would say, that we have this. I mean, think of how many nations do not have this interaction, with their government. It's why I have hope, and it's one of those things we got to make sure we hold on to this level of transparency. So when our government starts trying to manipulate its way around this, it's very alarming. FOIA exists for a reason because I think from the beginning our founding fathers always believed this is a government for the people, by the people. We own you. They're on our leash, not vice versa.
Without transparency, there can't be accountability.
Right.
And without accountability, you cannot fix the problem.
Correct.
And that's what FOIA gives you, that first step.
Yeah.
Right? It's what you tell as a kid. You got to first recognize there's a problem before you can fix it.
Right.
And that's what allows us to do it. And that's part of what I love doing the work that we do for ICANN
Yeah.
every day. Well, going back
Okay.
to our timeline,
Okay.
so we sue them in May 17, 2022. At this point, there really is no place for them, for the
Right.
CDC, DOJ to go. We've now asked for this in every possible way. We've asked for it in de-identified. We've asked for just what you gave to Oracle. We've now asked for everything. We actually had 2 other requests we made, but we kept this simple that we
Okay.
didn't include
Yeah.
it in here.
Sure.
That actually kind of rounded out in my mind, but I don't want
Okay.
to get into too much.
I'm just dying to
legal
know like
machination.
which lawsuit we actually won. I mean,
It took both.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I don't, if you went to the store to buy something for $2 and you gave $1 and you gave a second $1, which dollar bought it for you?
that's true. Good point.
It
Right.
took both of them to do it. It took both of them to basically create a situation where that was it. There were no arguments left effectively. And in some ways, actually, the arguments that was taken in the first suit kind of locked them in to being a bit stuck.
Yeah.
The second two, by taking that technical argument, they also kind of effectively conceded that we can get the documents. We just didn't ask for them the right way. So once we did, okay.
Yeah.
So at this point, after basically just, brick wall, 100% brick wall to 180 degrees, that essentially we get communication with DOJ, and that fine will provide the data. And what we do is we enter into a scheduling order with the court, which is what happens in FOIA. Once the government finally agrees to provide the data, the next step is to agree on the schedule. When are you going to provide it?
Yes, we got 3 quotes here of the response. Let's take a look at this. This case involves the Freedom of Information Act FOIA request that Plaintiff Informed Consent Action Network submitted to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The request seeks all data submitted to the CDC's vSafe program, a smartphone-based system that used text messaging and web-based surveys for personalized and confidential health check-ins with enrolled participants to monitor and assess for potential adverse events following a COVID-19 vaccination. As the parties have discussed, CDC is currently processing a large batch of records responsive to plaintiffs' request and expects to produce the non-exempt portions of these records on or before September 30th, 2022. Specifically by that date, CDC intends to complete processing and to post publicly on its website a public use of set of data that the agency collected from tens of millions of V-Safe participants between December 14, 2020 and July 31st, 2022. After CDC posts this public use V-Safe data set, the parties have agreed to meet and confer regarding the adequacy of that production, any challenged redactions or withheld data within that production, and the outstanding portion of plaintiff's FOIA request.
So just to put what you just read in context,
Yeah.
that is a document signed by our firm on
Yep.
behalf of ICANN and the Department of Justice on behalf of the CDC. That is a agreed upon.
So we agreed to this language. We both said
Right, we
this
both
is what's
signed that.
happening.
And if you listen carefully to what, if anybody's listening carefully, just read, they're agreeing by a certain date, by basically a month
Yeah.
out, to produce almost all the de-identified data.
Yeah.
And then we reserve the right to simply meet it. We're going to meet again after 24 days and discuss what we think is missing and what's the next step.
Okay.
Right. So that agreed upon schedule that's signed by the both parties then gets submitted to the judge, and the judge then issues an agreed upon, signs it, and basically enters an order
Yeah.
compelling what you just read to happen, but as a judicial order. And I believe
Here we
there it
have.
is. And this is an order from the court. And on the second page of it,
Go ahead.
what it says, it says, on or before September 30, 2022, CDC will, right, they're being commanded by
Yeah.
the court, will produce its first batch of non-exempt records responsive to plaintiff, that's ICANN's,
Yeah.
FOIA request, as described more fully in the party status report of August 22nd, 2022. That status report is what you just read.
Right.
It describes what they're going to provide.
Great.
And then it just says in the next paragraph that on October 14th, the parties are to meet.
Come together,
and
make sure they
discuss.
did it right.
Well, let's put it this way. We reserved all objections, meaning in this we agreed you can give us a first batch, but we're not waiving any rights. We're going to meet and we're going to talk about what we believe is missing, what else should be provided.
Yeah.
And this, it might be a good point
Let's talk
to
about
explain what they're providing.
Yeah, let's talk about what they're providing and what we think we still need. We'll get that all the way, and then we'll look at this data.
Yeah, so VSafe has about 10 million unique users,
Right.
registrants that registered for VSafe, starting when the vaccine rolled out in December, and
Yep.
until it looks like folks can see it on the screen.
Oh yeah, here's the
And this is
smartphone app.
actually a good thing to look
Yeah.
through. So you could see that you enter, and if you've registered, you can give a health check right there. You give a fever check.
And it has
a
little
symptom
check
check.
boxes. Have you had these symptoms? And then there's a square box there. Any other symptoms or health conditions you want to report, you can see that box that wasn't covered by their little questionnaire, which I think is going to prove to be very important.
Right, and there was
Yeah.
one more section right there that also had to check the boxes, which was health impact.
Yeah.
And which basically asks you, did it affect a normal life function? Did it?
Yeah.
There it is. Did it require you to miss school or work, or did you have to go to a doctor? And these are
Right.
the check the box. Now there are other check the box fields in the VSafe database, including, did you have COVID?
Right.
There are, and there's a race, ethnicity, gender, sex, and so forth. There's a bunch of fields. So what we got from the CDC, what they agreed when they said the de-identified, is those check the box fields.
Okay.
And and as ordered by the court, right?
Yep.
Will produce by September 30th. On September 30th, not a minute to lose.
Yeah.
The CDC sent our firm a letter, and in that letter it says, it describes the request for all data submitted to the VSafe, and it says enclosed are 5 data sets responsive to your request. That's 5 Excel files.
Yep.
These data sets include certain information collected from VSafe participants from December 14, 2022 through July 31, 2022. After a careful review, some of the information is withheld from release pursuant to FOIA Exemption 6, which we'll go through in a minute.
Okay.
And then it says, and we can circle back to this, it says the agency, that's the CDC, originally planned to post these data sets on CDC's website. If you recall, Del, that's what
Right.
they said in
They
that
said they were gonna do that.
scheduling order, right?
Right.
On or before September 30th, 2022. However, the agency has not yet completed the technical and administrative processes required to post data on a cdc.gov site. The agency is therefore releasing these data directly to you, okay, And,
Yeah.
and let's just start with the second point for
Yeah.
a second. CDC has billions of
dollars.
endless amounts of resources.
Right.
This data set is not that complicated.
Right.
We got it at 6 p.m. on Friday, this past Friday. We provided it to ICANN,
Yep.
and incredibly, by Monday, you guys launched.
Yeah,
This
an
incredible
amazing dashboard. Now,
dashboard.
let's be clear. As soon as we saw this coming, and I was asked this by one of the reporters that was asking me, well, when did you decide to build the dashboard? And I said, well, as soon as we knew the data, when we had won this suit, we knew that there was going to be, we're going to need some way. We started thinking about how that would be done. But what's so important about this is the CDC should have built this all the way back when this started. I mean, a year ago, this should have been underway. For them to say, well, we just don't have the resources to build a technology to be able to do this. The reporter asked me, like, was it when you found out that they weren't going to build it? No, they should have built this a year ago. And so we've had to do, as a nonprofit, what our government had billions of dollars to do. Our donors, really a handful of people, when you look at the size of the world and what's going on, dedicated individuals made this possible.
Yeah. When the CDC wants, man, can it act quickly.
Yeah,
And we've seen that time and time again.
yeah.
One can only speculate, is it that they couldn't technically achieve the feat, or was it that they couldn't find a way to
Make it
display
look
the
good.
data that meets their policy objectives? Because they're a policy-driven organization, please.
You know what? Why don't we just go ahead? Why don't we go and take a look at this data? We got it over
Yeah.
here on a
Sure.
touch screen form, and so let's check this
Okay.
out. Everybody, you can do this at home. This is why we built it for you. Totally transparent. You just go online, icandecide.org/vsafe, and you can peruse this. But let's just sort of take you through it a little bit here in studio. So, Aaron, as you can see, we've got a touch screen here. This is actually connected to the internet right now. This is risky. This is the first time we've ever tried to use this on the internet. But this is the interface that we built. This is the dashboard that has been built. This is the dashboard that the CDC, with their billions of dollars, was incapable of building. Thank you to all of you that are sponsors of us. You made this possible for the entire world, for every scientist, for every doctor, for everyone in the world. They can now start looking at this data and learn some things. So as you pointed out, Aaron, over there, you have the corner. Show us what's up in the corner and what we're looking at just based on the numbers that are involved.
So so as we mentioned earlier, there were 10,108,273 individual users. These are folks that actually signed up and registered to use vSafe and to provide health check-in.
Okay, so 10 million altogether. Now, you wanted to point out, this is a brand new page that you just brought us this morning. This is the registered vSafe users. So these are those that registered. They had to register when they were getting the vaccine. Yeah, I'll be a part of that program.
That's right.
And then we see, when the registry really happened. Why do you think this is important? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so what we see here is the number of new registrants by month.
Okay.
If you go all the way to the bottom left, what you see is on December of 2020, that,
Yep.
if folks might recall, is when the first COVID vaccine was given EUA approval.
Right.
That was the very first time in the United States that anybody could get a COVID vaccine. And with the rollout of it, you saw
Yep.
most of the folks who registered to use vSafe was in December, January, February, March.
I mean, look at that right
April.
here. Like, this is the bot. Like, of all the time this is available, it sort of trickles off people that are inspired to be a part using the system. But this is the group. So why early on? Why do you think that matters?
I mean, it seems to be that the number of users, the registering tracks enthusiasm for the product.
Right.
In the very beginning, in the first few months, there were no mandates. People weren't being compelled to get it.
You weren't going to lose your job if you
Weren't gonna
didn't
lose your
get it.
job.
None of that was happening yet.
Was that happening?
There's literally like, get behind me as soon as this door opens.
these are
This
the
was a rush for a
fighting.
Cabbage Patch doll, basically, right here. This is the Cabbage Patch doll rush.
That's a good analogy.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
These are the folks. Remember, there were stories of people cutting it, like
Right.
not waiting their turn. They were not only healthcare workers, and they went and they snuck in.
Right.
This is that time period. So these are the folks who are enthusiastic
Gung-ho.
about the vaccine. These are the ones who want to participate. I believe there's a number of stories online about those who are, vaccine proponents
Yeah.
of a great degree.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Right.
writing stories about and
I just got mine. So excited,
yeah,
so pumped.
excited. And
Okay.
some of those folks we now know signed up for VSafe, right?
Okay,
This is
so when you look at this, 0.8, 2, 1, 2, 1.5. I mean, really, the body, that's almost like what, 8-ish million of the 10 we're going to see got involved right at the beginning. So this is your gung-ho group.
Right.
No one here is being forced to get it. They love it, and we could imagine that they want to see a success. They want to stand there as the superheroes going, follow me. Look how good this is working for me. That's important because if you're going to look to people to sort of report vaccine injuries or issues, you know, some of the argument about this data is like, well, it's just the people that wanted to complain. I mean, this is, you only drew to VSafe those that had a problem with the vaccine. No. You drew the people that were lined up for the Cabbage Patch doll. They couldn't wait to get the vaccine. So under those circumstances, let's go back to this page then. So this is the data really of the gung-ho that got vaccinated. So, take me through what you think. Like you sort of mentioned some of this on Fox News. We have adverse health impacts up here.
Yeah, I'll go through that. Just to wrap up one point, if I may.
Okay.
What's so important about that point, that it's not just those who wanted to report adverse events that signed up for this, because if that was the case, you would have seen a more even distribution over time
Right.
of people signing up, is that this 10 million number may very well be reflective of the larger 250 million people who got the shot.
Right.
Right? Meaning that's the one argument that when I saw it, I was wondering, well, is there a confounder here? Is it that these 10 million people, they signed up because they wanted to report an issue, but when I saw that data that you just showed, that assuaged me. In fact, one could even argue it's the other way.
Right.
It's
This has a bias towards the success of the vaccine.
potentially, because those ones are signing
Right.
up.
And so, and that is the question, because this really is just a snapshot. This is only 10 million people, but they were all involved. They're getting this app is waking them. How are you feeling today? It's taking them through it. Now, and of the 10 million people, we have these issues, but this snapshot you're saying should be pretty accurate because of who's
it
involved.
Could very well be, because VSafe was promoted to people as they were getting the shot. Literally, got the shot, they got the paperwork, and they were saying, hey, sign up. We'll give you reminders.
Yeah.
So people signed up for it. Did
they even get reminders like, it's time to get your booster shot or you get your second shot? All that was a part of the thing?
They got many texts to do, click in and do follow-ups. But VAERS, in contrast, you're told you only use VAERS if you have an issue.
Okay.
Right? So VSafe, even though it's dubbed, it's got the word safe in it as a safety, it really was given to people before they had any issues, and they were encouraged to sign up. In fact, one of the health check-ins is day 0, meaning just as you're getting the shot.
Right.
So
this isn't reflective of just people that this is supposed to really be a full captured snapshot. It was whether you were going to have success or not, we won't know until you fill out this app. So we have both sides. We have those that did really well and those that did not.
Right, and I think that is the way the CDC designed VSafe, where VAERS, they designed it to only capture those who are injured.
And we don't know what percentage is that of the population that got. There's no reference point in VAERS.
Right, in VAERS.
Yeah.
But here, we believe the CDC specifically was trying to capture it effectively. Yes.
Okay.
People. So here we go.
Let's get into it.
10 million people are using VSafe. And here is the adverse health impacts. When they were showing it on the screen, right, there was those check the boxes where you could check one of these. So
someone checked,
boxes.
unable to perform normal activities. And then in the middle, like the more moderate, missed work or school, did not go in. And then there was required medical care or hospitalization.
Right.
So let's just look. So this is how this app works. We can just touch that really quick, and it sort of shows, you can see all the numbers will change over there. Of the 10 million people in this system, 782,913 checked this box. They checked the box, I went to a doctor. I went to the hospital. I was admitted into the ER after my vaccination. So that number, by the way, is about 7.7%.
It's the number that checked it at least once.
That checked at least once.
At least once. So about 7.7% of these users, these presumably enthusiastic users of
gung-ho users,
get the vaccine, they reported that they received, and most of the reports came in the first week or so after vaccination, that they needed some type of medical care, seeing a doctor, emergency room, or hospitalization. And you can see here that actually That's how many individual users reported needing medical care. That's how many total reports there were of the need for medical care.
Wow.
So it's like almost 3 on average. Folks who needed medical care that reported it, on average, needed it almost 3 times to
Meaning
medical care.
they made multiple visits, not just one.
Right.
Oh, I was overreacting, I'm going home. They came back, or went deeper into the medical system. That being reported, I just didn't complain about going to my doctor once or the hospital 2 and 3 times for these people. That's not good. Somebody's having a problem.
That's not good.
We
Yeah,
have to assume.
you don't go to the doctor 3 times for a sniffle.
And let's just say this, when we look at also, this is an important field, hospitalizations, this is exactly what the vaccine was supposed to keep you from having to do, right?
Right.
I mean, the vaccine has totally failed. Remember, everybody, this vaccine doesn't stop infection. They've given up on that. Almost everyone in the world that got the vaccine has gotten infected at least once, if not 2 and 3 times from the coronavirus as the variants have mutated. So the only thing they've hung their hat on is, well, we're going to lower hospitalization. Under these numbers, Aaron, I think it's safe to say that if we're saying 7.7%, I'm just going to sort of rough this out really quick. This is just out of 10 million people. If we look at 75% of the country of 330, 40 million people, however you want to count that number, 75% is over 200 and something million. When you take 7.7% of that, that means like approximately, just a round number, roughly 20 million people. This is a snapshot of what happened. It says to us that, should this be accurate, 20 million Americans probably needed medical care after the vaccinations. That's a gigantic number.
It's a very troubling number, and if one were to speculate why the CDC wouldn't want to be forthcoming with this data, it might be right in that
huge
number,
one.
right there.
Tell me about this, 1.3 million missed work or school. Why do you think that this is important? So now we're over, this swath, over 10%. And for me, this says, I keep hearing that, oh, the injuries are 1 in a million, or maybe they'll say 1 in 100,000. That's sort of where they sort of cut it off. Like, oh, like even with the myocarditis, they want to say it's like, well, per 100,000. We're talking, in this case, 1 in 10, right? 1 in 10 are missing work or school.
Yeah, yeah.
Add them both together.
Yeah, and if you add in the next category as well of
Unable to perform normal activities.
Not everybody, is going to work or school, and they kind of, they go with each other. Together, those 2 categories are 25% of the users, separate and apart from those that needed medical care.
Wow.
So if you take those 25% who are unable to perform normal activities or had to miss work or school, and the 7.7% that needed medical care, you're at over 32% of the users in this captive CDC-created tool that they designed, that they put out, that they said will give us the answers about
Will make us healthier.
safe.
A product that will make you healthier and go through this where you're not affected and you won't miss work or miss activities or, by God, go to the hospital.
And what makes this really concerning, too, is that, for example, when you look at certain age groups, they really have a low risk when it comes to COVID. I mean, extremely low. As a great example, I think, are members of our military forces who are being, persecuted, by the brass and the military because they refused the COVID vaccine, in particular those that have a religious exemption. As you know, our firm filed a lawsuit against the Air Force.
Yep.
And got an injunction against the Air Force discriminating against those seeking a religious exemption to the COVID-19 vaccine. And a federal judge, we talked about this really and understood the importance of when you ask people to go fight and die to protect the Constitution, probably should also respect their right on the Constitution, and the first right being freedom of religion.
Right.
Okay.
Amazing.
But when you look at that, what was the Air Force's case? And what is most likely to be the Army's case, because we just sued the Army for class action too, with I can't support.
Yeah.
Their argument is, okay, maybe the vaccine doesn't stop transmission, right?
Yeah.
But we need a force that's ready to fight. We can't have people missing work or school, not being able to conduct normal activities, or seeking medical care.
Unable to conduct normal activities like run, chase, fight, hide, dive into bunkers, avoid roadside bombs. Can't have this. This doesn't work.
Enlisted folks who are in their, late teens and early 20s often, a third of the 32% of them who get infected with SARS-CoV-2 are not having, based on the data that I've seen,
Yeah,
this level of disruption.
absolutely not.
Assuming, and I'm making a big assumption here, that this data here equally applies to that age demographic. I don't know that answer.
Right.
Because the only age differential they provided us in this data is under 3 years of age or over.
Let's look at that.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and look at that. We have that here, folks. So again, you get to search this data. Look how, I mean, you imagine what it took to build this. 144 million lines of health data, by the way, is what is behind this skin that is making this possible. The health records of 10 million people. But here, I can select younger than 3. Give it a moment so it can readjust. Now you can see under 3 years old, there was a total of 13,963 individuals that were under the age of 3. And of them, we had 3,000 of them that said they were impacted by the vaccine. Take me through why you think these numbers are important.
I think these numbers are concerning. And I'll back up and say this. The data we just looked at,
Yeah,
when we looked at the chart beforehand,
yeah,
they had most of the data by May of 2021.
yeah.
The first COVID vaccine for children under 3 was not until June, I believe, 18th.
So they
of
knew
2021.
everything we're just looking at. They knew before they did this to the kids.
Not everything, but a significant proportion.
Okay.
If I'm afraid to touch it, but if I scroll down,
Yeah.
oh, it's not on this page.
No.
Sorry, it's on the next page. But for those who want to look at this, you will find not only did most folks sign up in the first few months, but most of the health reports were also given between December 2020.
I think we have that.
It's on the,
Is that the
it's
fourth
on the
one there?
second page.
Is this-
Yeah,
You sure?
yeah, I'm positive. You click it, and you go right here.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Symptoms by year and month, and you can get a sense of when the
Okay.
reports were mostly submitted, right
Okay.
at the beginning.
Yep.
Right, and then also, oh boy.
Yeah, I'll do it.
All
Got
right,
it.
thank you.
I'll play with this. Okay, very good.
And then if we go back to
Back to here.
back
Okay.
to this page, so when we look here, so they had a very good sense.
Yeah.
They should have, but yet they rolled this out for infants. And when they did that, if you could just click down the required medical care,
That's it. The serious ones going to a doctor or into the hospital.
right? So
Wow.
see, this is out of the 13,963 infants
yeah.
under 3 years old,
Yeah.
babies and infants, 1,900 of them required medical care after this shot. And most of these reports are within days
Yeah.
of getting the shot. So these parents were reporting it. That's 7.2%. COVID among infants has
Wow.
been widely reported by Johns Hopkins
Yeah.
and even the CDC's own data as being almost always benign.
Yeah. Asymptomatic. The kids were they weren't having any issues whatsoever.
If 7.2% of children that got infected with SARS-CoV-2 that had COVID ended up needing medical care, trust me, that would be, I shouldn't say that, not trust me. I assume
Yeah.
that would be all over CNN,
Yeah.
MSNBC, telling you.
We've shown
you
so many
gotta
times on the
run
show.
your kid out and you got to get that shot.
Right.
That data, that number should be very, should be considered.
And we're just, I mean, we are literally just doing this live. I also think what's interesting is, again, it's roughly the same as the other groups. Here you have a totally different age group and a different group that would have signed up. Kids are different than adults. And this is a different time than original sign up. With this sign up, again, severe injury or going to the hospital in the 7%. So there that starts saying to me, that first graph or those first, it's not necessarily an anomaly. We keep seeing this looks like we're starting to see a pattern here. I mean, it's still in this, I mean, it's a lot to extrapolate, but that's what I'm just looking at this right now. I think about that. Now think about this. You add in, these two groups again, and again, we're going over, what, 20, we're moving in 10, 20% of kids having an issue. All right. Another thing that I think is just really interesting is that we can also break this down, and we're back to, I want to get back to the regular numbers. Let's just get out of here and just go back to 3 or older. All right. And, we could also break this down. We have sex here and we have, race, women. This is women up here across the board. In every race, up here is Caucasian or white, I guess we put it. Women having a much greater response and having issues, more health issues than men.
Yeah, and the fact that they're finding that more women are having issues actually comports with the report that we've received from the FDA that Pfizer submitted them shortly after the vaccine started being used.
All right, we're looking at that report right now in full
Yes.
screen. Okay.
This was another, and again, this is not a report that the FDA just handed over. We had to go to court. We had to, fight to obtain this.
Yeah.
And you could see right there, I see it on the screen, that the gender breakdown for all of these often serious reactions that Pfizer told the FDA happened post use of their COVID vaccine, most of them were in women, and that number comports with what we're seeing here.
So again,
on
it's
the screen.
proving, it's proving itself out based on the clinical trials, things that we're looking at, the things that internally FDA is using. This snapshot from people say, well, it was self-reporting, whatever it was. Yes, but it's lining up with other data they had, again, giving us a sense that this may be a very accurate snapshot or moving in that direction. All right, let's move on because, obviously, over there really quickly, take us through the fact that one of the important questions is, I keep getting which vaccine's worse than another. We heard a hell of a lot about Johnson & Johnson, yet over there on your side, not a huge part of this, these issues.
So one of the things that, so we've obviously been looking very closely at this data to see what we can use it for. Obviously for the ultimate objective of assuring civil liberties.
Right.
Everybody wants the shot. That's a choice.
Yeah.
It's America. We can take risks. But the idea is nobody should be compelled ever to get it. In any event, and looking closely at the data, you see here, this is among all 10 million individuals that reported an adverse health impact, right? There's more folks that got Moderna, Fauci shot, for shorthand, because it was developed by the NIH along with Moderna, really. 1.6 million folks doses of that, folks. Whereas with Pfizer, it was 1.4 million folks. But when you look underneath the hood, there actually were more people that got Pfizer than got Moderna.
Oh,
but yet
interesting.
There's more folks that reported adverse health impact from,
And just click on it so you can show people how interactive it is. Go ahead and click on one of these, folks. If you do this, look at again, it changes all your numbers. You get a full setup, and all now what you're looking at is Moderna. Isn't this awesome? Took a lot of work to do this. Again, you guys make this possible. The whole world is using this right now. All right, I want to sort of get this all, wrapped up. Let's just, go ahead.
Your fun point?
Yeah, go ahead.
These are folks that got 2 brands, 3, 4. And there's even somebody apparently that got 5 brands. I just want to know who's that person. And how'd you get 5 different brands of COVID vaccine? They had to have gone overseas. Well, I don't want to mess with this too much, but sorry.
All right, so we get the idea. Let's move on to symptoms. And so one of the things that we can do is we can click right here. We can look at the symptoms. This will shift over in just a second. Here's another one of the pages. And here we list this. This was the questionnaire, basically. Like, this was how it laid out. You're being asked, do you have pain? Do you have fatigue, headache, muscle or body ache, joint pain, swelling, chills? Once again, let's just go ahead and just go there. We can say, I want to just look at the severe cases in all of these. We get to see, look at all of that red. 1.1 million having fatigue after the vaccine. You're definitely not going to work, I don't think, if you're feeling that bad, saying, I feel severely ill here, muscle, body aches, headache. The list goes all the way down. What do you want to say about this page? Because I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask.
Well, so to give it legal context, it's important to understand that these categories of symptoms were the predetermined symptoms listed by the CDC.
Right.
There are a lot of other symptoms that I find surprising are not there. For
that was
example,
the question I was going to ask you.
What about anaphylaxis?
Correct.
What about heart pain, chest pain?
Right.
What about
I got abdominal pain. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear a whole lot about that. I heard a lot about your chest hurting.
Right.
Heard a lot about like strokes, things like that.
Right. But this is not uncommon because and we've dealt a lot with HHS on behalf of ICANN on this and the FDA on this issue, which is when they do clinical trials, they will have this preset list of symptoms, and then they'll have like this other category.
Right. The other box.
The other box.
Right.
but that's just a way of really, it guides people to just look at those symptoms,
Yeah.
guides them away from reporting other things, and it biases the actual study. Either do a real list of everything, or just do a box. But this type of system is not great. That said, we have only received so your audience understands.
Yeah.
We've only received the data for the check the box fields. There was a fill in the blank box.
Right.
We have not received that yet.
So that would be if I'm going to probably say I had pain, definitely. That pain was in my chest. I went to a doctor in the hospital. And remember, you're going through, you're going to say, yes, I had pain, okay? Yes, I did go to the hospital. Wait a minute, it's not asking me about the heart attack that I had. Right, that's not in here. They're left writing that into the box. So I think we can assume in many ways under the pain box is where we're going to see a lot of those things hidden, right? Like as a follow-up.
I think a lot of people will simply just click the other box.
Just the other.
They'll just hit the other and they'll
Okay.
describe their symptoms. It's kind of like when you think of VAERS reports. VAERS was like the other box.
Right.
And they just describe what's going on with them. And in many ways, that other box is where a lot of the information that would have probably ended up in VAERS, potentially,
Yeah.
ended up in this system, because somebody using vSafe isn't going to go and then submit a VAERS report
No.
too.
Right.
So
This
it's
is
in
it.
there.
You're assuming it's here.
Yeah. And so, that is something we're going to be fighting about.
So when they said, do you sign off on all this? We're saying, no, we want that other box. We want to know how many people wrote in myocarditis, how many wrote in heart attack, how many wrote in stroke and blood clots and anaphylaxis and Bell's palsy and all of these things that we see skyrocketing on the VAERS system right now. We're still waiting for that data. And when we get it, by the way, when we get that, folks, guess where it's going? Right into here, into your searchable dashboard here. I wonder if we're making it a little bit more difficult on ourselves now that they know how accessible this information is going to be when they finally capitulate and give it to us.
If you're worried that it's going to make them fight harder, don't worry. I don't think they can fight any harder. Okay. That's what you mean. They don't want to do this to us anyway. Trust me. There's nothing that's going to make them want to fight harder.
Well, all I know is I'm glad you're the one fighting for us because you keep coming out with victories. I know one of the things, Dorit Reese, who wrote an article about this, she said, they're stating that the CDC didn't provide what they had to. They were providing. If that was the case, the judge wouldn't have made this happen. They wouldn't have made us get all this and say, you know what? ICANN really is standing up for what you had promised, and therefore you got to hand it over to them. Amazing job. For those of you that didn't have the opportunity to sign up to this vSafe data, and I know you're going to go home, we could go on and on for hours and hours and have fun with this, but this is your tool. Share it with everyone you know. It's right there on our website. All you have to do is go to iCanDecide.org/vSafe. But if you didn't have the opportunity to sign up to vSafe, but you, since having received the vaccine, have been injured, you've been watching the Highwire because you want to know what is it I can do. There's a lot you can do. You can also use the VAERS system. We want to help you with all of that. And so we built this tool for you.
If you or a loved one has been injured after receiving a COVID-19 vaccine, including if you are a participant in a clinical trial, go to injuredbycovidvaccine.com. Submissions are confidential. We are here to help provide support, including connecting with medical specialists and potentially securing legal representation. To assure the safety of COVID-19 vaccines for everyone, it is imperative that every person injured by this product report their injury. We can provide assistance completing a report to the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. So, if you or a loved one has suffered an injury from a COVID-19 vaccine, go to injuredbycovidvaccine.com now.
All right, well, I'm here with Aaron Siri, who has made so much of the work that we've presented to the public, not just even before COVID, the lawsuits we were winning regarding vaccines and aluminum and autism and all those things, but now it's gotten serious because the whole world has been thrust into a vaccine program with a totally untested vaccine. Aaron, one of the things that as I was standing there, and I just want to again crunch the raw numbers because VAERS, VAERS is something we used before COVID. We didn't have a V-Safe for all the childhood vaccines. And the question has always been, how accurate is VAERS? What are we looking at here? Is this, you know, and they'll say, well, you can't trust VAERS, it's a passive reporting system. But every study ever done has never, ever determined, there's not a single study that says VAERS is over-reporting it. Never. It's always, it's under-reporting it by some percentage. And we've talked, in one of the arguments that you've made multiple times, is the Harvard Medical School study, which ultimately, this is the study done by Harvard Medical School back in looking at dates between 07 and 10. They looked at the system and they said, it appears that VAERS is capturing fewer than 1% of the vaccine adverse events that should be reported. And so when they say VAERS is inaccurate, we've been saying, you know, prior to COVID, it looks like if Harvard Medical School is right, that those numbers are maybe 1% of what's happening. We've been giving them some leeway during COVID because we thought, well, they're probably a little more focused on VAERS during COVID. They knew it was an experimental product. And we've been thinking maybe it's about 10%. But one of the things I was thinking is this V-Safe data kind of gives us a snapshot in which we can sort of test VAERS right now. Let me just bring this up really quickly. This is just, I just threw this at my team. It's going to be a little bit rough, but you get the idea. Remember, it was medical, like that serious group, that 7.7% of the 10 million, the 782,000, all said they went to the hospital, urgent care, or a doctor's office. Can we highlight those on our VAERS system? This is the VAERS system saying exactly that. They're claiming on VAERS, that's 521,992. Now remember, that number is not out of 10 million like the V-Safe data. This is of everybody. If we're going to try and ask, what is VAERS showing us about the system?
Well, it's out of the pool of people in America that are likely to report to VAERS, and it's an unknown number is the problem.
It's an unknown number. Well, what I'm trying to say is, can't we test it a little bit? Because if we take that number, if we take that those injuries are about 552,000, and VAERS said, yeah, I had to go get medical help, and then we go back to that number I said, which was the V-Safe data, if we extrapolate 7.7% of those that got the vaccine, right, that's about 20 million people. And this, you know, so that there, it's 20 million people if V-Safe is right. If VAERS was right, it's only 500,000 people. You see what I'm saying? That discrepancy shows us how far off of the VAERS numbers V-Safe is, which means it's roughly, and we calculated this, it's right around 2.5% of the actual number if V-Safe is showing us a clearer snapshot, which is right in that range that Harvard said. It's definitely better than 1%, a lot better. So it's twice as good as it was, but it's not 10%. VAERS is not showing us 10%. It's not even showing us 5%. It's showing us something like 2.5%. So folks, let me just take this all the way through. Let's look at VAERS one more time because I want to look at another number. So if the hospitalizations, and we use the V-Safe to understand what it should be, then let's say it's roughly, you know, let's say 5%. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. 31,000 deaths is only potentially 5% of the amount of deaths. We're going to say that V-Safe just showed us that VAERS is capturing 5%. It actually is more like 2.5, but 5%, these are scary, scary numbers. I mean, really horrifying numbers. And yet, when you're asking questions of the CDC, they're not saying, oh, let me just throw the data at you. You're really overestimating this. They're hiding it from you. And I think that that's really scary.
Hiding it from the American people.
Yes, hiding it from the American people.
Yeah.
Which tells you something. Now, you fought to get the data from the FDA based on the Pfizer trials, right? I mean, that was something made famous. You were all over the newspapers because they pushed back and said it's going to take us 75 years to produce that data. So right, here with V-Safe, CDC's pushing back. You already dealt with the FDA. You won that case. That data is all coming out. But in many ways, this V-Safe data is really sort of that accurate. It's giving us a real sense of probably what they saw in those trials anyway, is it not?
In many ways, the V-Safe data is probably a more accurate reflection of the safety of the product than the clinical trial data that we would get from the FDA.
Wow.
Because the clinical trials are done by Pfizer,
right,
or Moderna.
Right.
Pfizer does it. And as in the case of Maddie DeGarry, we see how they take the data, sanitize the data before they hand it to the FDA. The FDA doesn't do the clinical trials.
Right.
FDA just gets whatever data that Pfizer gives them, and they rely on it, and that's what they use to license. So that clinical trial data, which is still coming out, will be obtained. We're close to actually having all of it.
Yep.
And I understand that there's a number of institutions that are closely, serious institutions of higher learning in our country
Yeah.
that are carefully analyzing and waiting for the last piece of data to come in, because until they have it all,
Yeah.
can't do analysis. But here, on the other hand, this data is not done by Pfizer. It's in the same form of what Pfizer does.
Yeah.
Pfizer gives you a shot. You're in a clinical trial. You come in. You report to Pfizer what happened. You call in. I recall your Maddie DeGarry segment
Yeah.
where she described she had to call in and give her information to Pfizer. That's exactly what happens with VSafe.
And then when she said, I'm paralyzed, I'm in a hospital, I can't eat, they checked the box for her and said, abdominal pain.
Abdominal pain. But the great thing about VSafe is that when we already got what was just shown, but when we get those fields.
She would have written in.
Right.
Yeah.
They would have written in.
Paralyzed.
And the American
or,
public's entitled to those fields.
Yes.
It will take a while.
Yeah.
They're going to fight. But at the end of the day, we are in the legal right about it, and they will have to provide it. That pool of data, and already what we see on the screen, what you just went through,
Yeah.
that is probably the closest approximation to what the effects this vaccine are really having on the safety side within the initial period.
That short period of time.
I'm not talking about long-term
You're not
harm.
gonna, like cancers, all these other
Right.
things that could potentially be
Right,
happening.
that's when you're doing your analysis
Yeah.
before about VAERS, comparing VAERS to VAERS has a bit more of the long-term stuff. This
Yeah.
VSafe, most people are reported lost interest and left.
Yeah.
So here, what we saw on the screen in terms of the short-term safety profile, that's probably going to be the best data that we can obtain. That should be the data that our health officials are making decisions on. That's going to be what they should be looking carefully at. From
Yeah.
these enthusiastic folks who were running out to get the vaccine, and they're like saying, wait a second, I have this issue. They should be looking at that stuff carefully. If you want the answer about vaccine safety, probably the first place you should look, the best tool, is what you folks have created on that screen that we just went through.
It's amazing, and I want to thank you so much for making that possible. Let me ask you a personal question. You know, when we first got together, you know, I think you had a sense that there, you know, first of all, you were bold enough to go into, you know, where no man had gone before, no lawyer had gone for a very long time, which is in somehow figuring out a way to get into a legal system around vaccines. They were so protected. Every lawyer I was meeting with was saying, Del, you can't see them. I'm out. We tried years ago. We gave up. We're moving on. You said, no, Del, I'm interested in this. And we sort of together decided, let's take a different approach. Let's not go, we can't go after the manufacturers, we can't go after the doctors and the hospitals, but our government took on liability. Let's start suing them. You have won lawsuits for us against FDA, National Institute of Health, Health and Human Services, CDC. I mean, I haven't really looked up the history, but of all the lawyers that ever lived, I'm not sure there are many that have won as many important cases against our own government, especially when it comes to our health and in this arena. My question is this: as I pointed out, you fought for the Pfizer data when doctors, and McCullough was a part of one of the plaintiffs of that. Many great doctors came to you and said, we have got to get our hands on this data to figure out what's going on in our hospitals. I got to be able to help these people, and I can't tell what's going on. I want to know what these numbers are. What did Pfizer see? They told you 75 years you fought and won. We have this VSafe data. The CDC promised to be transparent. Our government promised to be transparent. They're spending billions of dollars to shut up anybody that's questioning the vaccine, but you're in there, you're not listening to what's happening on television, you're fighting to get the data the world needs to see. And you're fighting not just for the tens of thousands of people that are donating to ICANN and making all this possible for us. You're literally fighting for the lives of children and humanity in this country and the world. Do you think about that when you're stepping into these cases? Do you think about really what a Herculean mission you're up to right now?
Wow. I think that I just think about what the obligation, I'm usually just thinking about what the obligations are of our health authorities, how they are failing in many respects, and how their failures are resulting in the deprivation of civil liberties for not only everybody alive today, but our children going forward. If you don't want a medical procedure and the government's going to say you have to do it. And on that basis, you can't get a job. You can't go to school. We saw recently, you can't go to a restaurant. You can't serve in the military. You can't go to university. Then all your rights are no good. What value do they have? So you can have religion, but you got to do it only at home. You have a right to speech, but you can do it at home. You can right to assembly, but not really, because you can only assemble with yourself at home.
Right.
And so in many ways, we cannot have health officials in the position where what they say results in what our rights are. And I don't, that paradigm has been building. And when I think about what I'm doing, to your question, I don't think of it in the context that you framed it. I just think of it in that framework. Because that's also the task that ICANN has provided us, which is, at the end of the day, if we can't have the ability to decide what goes on below the layer of our skin, we don't really have any rights. And the government really can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
That is the last line of civil liberties out there. So when I'm doing these things, that's typically what I'm thinking about. And it's it's a substantive thought that guides the lawsuits and the legal actions that we take, with often sometimes the very specific, sometimes very broad guide rails that you provide us.
Wow. I mean, it's so incredible. And after asking the question, it's a big question, and your answer is sort of where I'm at, because people ask me the same thing, and it's true. You can't carry that large a thought. You just have to say one step in front of the other. What are the facts in front of me? I'm just going to deliver those facts, and let the chips fall where they may. Just a lot of them seem to be falling in your direction.
Well, it's easier when you are. It's easier when you have approached it in a situation where the law, the facts, and the equities to a degree are at least in the eyes of the judge, are in your favor.
Yeah.
For a lot of our suits, for what it's worth, the position we have is that for some of them, it depends where we file, that it has to be a case where the judge looks at you and says, I love vaccines. I hate you. I hate your client. But I got to rule for you anyway.
Wow.
That's the type of case you want in this arena.
Yeah.
Of all the other, that's not true of the other areas of law that I've practiced.
Right.
I don't usually go in with that mindset. But on this issue,
Right.
I do. But I'm pleased to say that is definitely softened to a degree, depending also where, over the last 3 years, as I think there has been a greater understanding about the dangers of letting the ever-changing whims, opinions, and views of public health officials drive our civil rights.
Right.
Judges are understanding that. Certainly governors in some states are understanding that. Judges are, their politicians are understanding that.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will continue to grow. Folks look at that and say, well, that you just want to get rid of vaccines. They're just a product. They're just a product.
Right.
Nobody wants to get rid of vaccines. Just like nobody wants to get rid of any other product that some people don't want.
Right.
All I believe, most of the supporters of ICANN want, they just want freedom. They want individual rights. They want the very basic thing that this country was founded on and made this country what it is.
Right.
Which is the idea that instead of letting somebody else decide what you do in your life, what risks you take, how to live, we're going to let people decide how to live, right? That those rights are inalienable.
Right.
The notion, yeah.
I mean, if you want to eat McDonald's, Doritos, drink Coca-Cola, go get, every vaccine as it comes on the market, this is a free country, and we stand up for those rights. But if I want to eat organic food, if I want to only drink, bottled spring water and take care of my health and exercise, and I don't believe vaccines are a part of that, or at least the certain ones I can select which ones I want or don't want, this is a free country. You have that right, and that's a right that you've been brilliant at fighting for us at ICANN and really looking at these products. That, as our mission statement has been from the beginning, dedicated to eradicating man-made disease. You've been such a great warrior for that cause for us.
I should say one thing though. I'm not sure I'm the attorney with the most wins against
Okay.
government in history. I just want to make
Okay.
that clear.
All right.
I also think I got a long way to go.
Yes, we got a lot of work
Maybe
to
I'll
do.
get there. I mean, at the pace at which you have us filing lawsuits, maybe. But I suspect there are others out there who can notch that up. I don't know about in the public health arena, but in government writ large,
I love the humility. Let me just take a second to talk to the audience here, folks. This is a gigantic win for you, for transparency, for your ability now to take any friend, any family member and say, look, here's the data as it's laid out. That wasn't possible a week ago. There was no way to see the data as the CDC was collecting it. Now you have it because of the work that we're doing here. You've seen, obviously in talking to Aaron Siri, how the talent that is behind the work that we're doing. And for all of you that get to watch the show today, whatever amount you're donating to ICANN, you get to have that warm feeling saying, oh my God, I was just a part of a world-changing mission, something there is no going back now. They cannot go back and lie. They're not going to be able to say, oh, injuries 1 in a million. It's over. That day is finally and completely done. That lie is dead and buried because those of you that helped us out. Now, for those of you, the millions of you watching right now, wouldn't you love to not just see this as a news piece that's totally separate from you, but say, you know what? I want to be able to think the next time Aaron Siri comes on the show and we've won a lawsuit against the federal government, or maybe a state, or maybe we fought for the very state that your kid's trying to go to school in, or maybe it's the military, the Army, or the Air Force, or the cases that we have going there. Don't you want to be able to claim that victory and say to yourself as you move on in life, I made a difference in this world. I didn't just sit back and wait for somebody else to save me. I got involved with the people that were making a difference. The High Wire and our nonprofit, ICanDecide.org, is like nothing else you've ever seen. We are not just reporting on the news. We are making the news. We are creating the news. We're trying to give you a vessel in which you have the opportunity to change the world. So please, right now, there are lawsuits that are sitting, on Aaron's desk, waiting to go. We just simply can't afford it. As we said, we could quit here. We could say we've got so many cases going on right now with Aaron Siri. It's enough. It's enough. But who else do you want in that courtroom? I know who I want there. And sure, thank you. Even if all of these lawsuits go through, it'll be a giant pile of wins. But there are some very important cases that are just sitting there waiting for us. Here's a few of them that we want to file. A lawsuit challenging the government, organ transplant. People can't get organ transplants without getting vaccinations. We want to sue Pfizer because of the willful misconduct now that we're getting this data coming in. We want to challenge the requirements for people that can't travel in this country. We want to challenge restrictions on the California doctors, which we've talked to doctors about that are being suppressed for telling the truth about the vaccines and ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Lawsuits challenge the constitutionality of the CICP, the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, which is the only place someone injured by a COVID vaccine can currently file a claim. Lawsuits challenging the lack of religious exemption. This is a big one. I'm not going to talk about the details of that, but we have a very interesting angle to try and get back a hold of a right to opt out of this program in those states that don't have that right now. So Aaron, we got you busy. I mean,
me and my whole team.
That's what I wanted to say.
I have an incredible team behind me.
And it's a growing team, is it not? I mean, when we first discussed this, it was kind of just you, but it's really what's happened since you've gotten involved in this issue for us.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I know you have other things going on. There's other lawsuits in your practice, but
yeah, well, I mean, the civil rights vaccine policy slash, right? I mean, in many ways, the legal work that we do for ICANN actually cuts across every single area of the law. There's FOIA cases that requires FOIA.
Yeah.
There are cases challenging constitutionality, for example, of laws that let doctors vaccinate minors, right? Separation of violating federal law. There's laws regarding administrative law that we have to bring all the time. There are cases that cut into almost every area of law imaginable, and so we use the tool available because it's not like you asked us to do one type of case ever. Yeah. Every case is unique. Every case, there's no precedent. There's no off-the-shelf example. So we have an ever-expanding, at this point, legal team that to just do the numerous and varying cases that we do on behalf of ICANN, either directly for ICANN or supported by ICANN.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and we've stretched you. I know recently we've looked into some of these food issues, food crisis issues, organic foods, USDA, so we keep pushing the envelope out there as we see a problem. And I am assuming, we've already brought a case against Facebook and sort of the censorship based on what happened here at the Highwire. But, I think there's future cases that are going to get into, my right to my own energy, my right to my own identity. What am I doing with my money? Do you get to decide what I can spend my money on? I mean, the future right now and the Constitution is under attack. In some ways, it seems by our own government, which is so sad. Yet, I keep saying, I'm happy to be alive right now. I mean, I'm happy that the world needs us. It needs warriors. And I never thought, I used to think like lawyers just really make the world expensive. I mean, I was a total liberal progressive. I was like anti-lawyers, and now I feel like I'm one of the most litigious human beings on the planet with the amount of times I'm telling you, you know what, we got to sue on this too.
Yeah, but you're the right kind of litigious, because you're not just going after money. You're not just trying to make an issue to get a buck. You're genuinely seeking the truth, the rights. You're funding the suits that have no money in them. These are the suits that nobody would ever bring because there's no financial incentive to do it.
Exactly
when
right.
there's a financial incentive to bring a suit in this arena, as you know, we never get involved because there's no point in ICANN spending, its precious donors' funds on that.
Right.
Really, the suits are where nobody would have the financial incentive to bring those suits. So you're litigious in the right way.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the incredible work you're doing, Aaron. We're going to keep it going. Look, I know Aaron just said, I'm the right kind of litigious. We're going after those types of lawsuits that don't pay out. You know why that's possible? It's you. It's you. I get to say, look, we don't have to make money. We don't have to make money. This isn't about making money. We're going after you. And when you watch what the CDC did, in any other situation, they kept making us file this in different ways. You know how expensive that would be for your average person trying to push back against the government? It's not possible. You can't do it. They're going to break you. And that's what they're hoping is going to happen here. They're hoping that it will cost us so much just to get to the answers that we'll give up. Well, guess what? We don't give up because you don't want us to give up. Because you are supporting all of this work. And so this show this week shows you that all types of different people step up. Lawyers step up. AI professionals step up and start trying to fix Facebook and building their own platforms. We built a network because all the other networks were lying to you. What you should ask yourself today is, what can I do? What can I do to make a difference? What is my talent? Because every single person we enroll, every single person we change, every single person that we share that Be Safe dashboard with us say, hey, why don't you learn something here? This is the actual raw data provided by the CDC. You don't have to take my word for it. This is it. You want to ask any questions? If you're cool with that and, having 7.7% of people needing medical care or hospitalization after the vaccine, go right ahead. But at least now you are informed. It is all about being informed. At least now, because the work we're doing here, we have transparency. This is how we achieve justice for everybody. Justice for all. That's what the Highwire is dedicated to. That is what Aaron Siri is working on our behalf to make happen. That is what you are a part of every time you donate, even just watching. Every time you share one of these videos with a friend, you make a difference. We're asking for $22 a month for 2022. It truly is changing the world. That's what this is about. Be a world changer, not a world complainer.